In relationships, communication is everything. The words we exchange with our partners can either build trust or reveal red flags. Sometimes, what a woman says can expose deeper issues that you shouldn't ignore. Stoicism teaches us to remain calm, composed, and to act with wisdom and clarity when facing difficult situations. If you find yourself hearing certain phrases, it's a sign that things may be heading in a dangerous direction, emotionally or mentally. In this video, we'll explore 6 things that, if she tells you, should be serious indicators that it's time to walk away. These aren't just petty arguments or misunderstandings. They are fundamental to respect, trust, and self-worth. You'll learn how Stoic principles like self-respect, emotional control, and maintaining your inner peace can guide you to make the right decision for your well-being. Remember, Stoicism teaches us to focus on what we can control, and sometimes that means making tough choices. If her words reflect toxic behavior or manipulative tendencies, leaving might be the best way to preserve your dignity and mental peace. So, if you've heard any of these phrases, it's time to take a step back, reflect, and perhaps let go. Now, let's get into the 6 things you should never ignore. Habit 1. You're too sensitive. The first phrase that should raise alarms is, "You're too sensitive." This seemingly harmless statement is often used to invalidate your feelings. It's a subtle way of shifting the blame and making you question your emotional responses. A woman who tells you this repeatedly is likely minimizing your concerns, making you feel like your emotions are exaggerated or unjustified. Stoicism teaches us that emotions are natural, but we must learn to master them, not suppress them. However, mastering emotions doesn't mean ignoring them entirely or allowing someone else to belittle them. When someone dismisses your feelings, it's a sign they may not value your emotional well-being. Over time, this can lead to a toxic dynamic where you feel constantly misunderstood or belittled. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus emphasized that our judgments about situations shape our emotional responses. If she constantly invalidates your feelings, she's undermining your ability to form healthy judgments. You deserve to be in a relationship where your emotions are respected, even if you sometimes need to work on controlling them. Here's a personal story. I once dated someone who often told me I was too sensitive. At first, I thought I needed to toughen up and brush off things that bothered me. But over time, I realized that her words were affecting my self-esteem. I started to doubt myself, wondering if I was overreacting to things that were genuinely hurtful. That's when I realized the issue wasn't my sensitivity. It was her refusal to acknowledge my feelings. If you're with someone who uses this phrase to dismiss your concerns, it's time to reevaluate the relationship. Stoicism teaches us to embrace logic and rationality, but it also teaches us to recognize when others are treating us with disrespect. Don't let anyone make you feel small for expressing your emotions. Walk away from people who don't honor your emotional experience. Habit 2. If you really loved me, you would. Another alarming phrase is, "If you really loved me, you would." This kind of manipulation often disguises itself as a test of loyalty, but it's really about control. The Stoics believed in cultivating virtue and acting with integrity, not out of fear or coercion. When someone starts placing conditions on love, especially through manipulation, it's a sign they're trying to gain power over you. This phrase often creates a dangerous precedent. It makes you feel that your love is constantly under evaluation, and that you must meet certain conditions to prove your worth. Marcus Aurelius, a great Stoic emperor, often spoke about the importance of staying true to oneself and not bending to external pressures. In relationships, love should be unconditional and based on mutual respect, not used as leverage to control someone's actions or emotions. I remember a time in my own life when I fell into this trap. I was dating a woman who frequently used this phrase to manipulate me into doing things I wasn't comfortable with. Whether it was spending more money than I could afford or canceling plans with friends, her conditions for proving my love were endless. At first, I complied, thinking that fulfilling her demands would strengthen our relationship. But with each test, I lost a bit of myself until I realized that true love doesn't require proving. It requires understanding. If she ever says, "If you loved me, you would," understand that this is not a request for love. It's a demand for control. Walk away before you lose your sense of self. Habit 3. I don't need you. The phrase, I don't need you, may sound like a declaration of independence, but in a relationship, it can signal emotional detachment. While it's essential for both partners to be self-sufficient, a relationship thrives on mutual dependence and support. The Stoics taught the value of interdependence and cooperation in building strong bonds. A woman who dismisses your role in her life entirely may be emotionally unavailable or unwilling to invest in a deeper connection. When someone says they don't need you, they are subtly telling you that your presence is inconsequential. It's not about fostering independence, it's about pushing you away. Stoicism encourages emotional self-reliance, but also acknowledges that meaningful relationships require effort and commitment from both sides. If you're constantly hearing this phrase, you might be investing in someone who isn't ready to share their life with you. There was a time in my life when I dated someone who often claimed she didn't need anyone, including me. While I admired her independence at first, I soon realized that her words were a defense mechanism. She was afraid of vulnerability and intimacy, which made it impossible for us to build a deep, lasting connection. Eventually, I had to accept that being with someone who refused to need anyone wasn't compatible with my desire for a meaningful relationship. If you're with someone who keeps insisting they don't need you, it's time to reassess the relationship. Stoicism teaches us to value our time and emotional energy. Don't waste yours on someone who doesn't value your presence. Habit 4. I'm just being honest. Another phrase to be wary of is, I'm just being honest. While honesty is essential in any relationship, this phrase is often used as a shield to justify hurtful or insensitive remarks. Stoicism places great emphasis on speaking with wisdom and kindness. Being brutally honest without considering the impact of your words is not a virtue. It's a lack of compassion. When someone claims they're just being honest while saying things that hurt you, they may be using honesty as an excuse to tear you down. Epictetus taught that we should be mindful of our words and how they affect others. Being honest doesn't mean being cruel, and it certainly doesn't mean neglecting empathy. I've had relationships where partners would say hurtful things under the guise of honesty. Whether it was criticizing my appearance or undermining my goals, their so-called honesty was damaging. Over time, I realized that true honesty should build up the relationship, not break it down. If you find yourself constantly on the receiving end of honesty that feels more like an attack, it's a sign that the relationship may not be healthy. Remember, Stoicism teaches us to act with virtue and integrity, which includes being mindful of how our words affect others. If someone is consistently using honesty to hurt you, it's time to walk away. Habit 5. You'll never find someone like me. The last phrase on our list is, you'll never find someone like me. This statement is often used to instill fear and insecurity, suggesting that you'll never find another woman who compares. It's a classic manipulation tactic meant to make you feel as though you're not good enough, and that leaving the relationship would be a mistake. The Stoics taught us to reject fear-based thinking and to trust in our own value. When someone uses this phrase, they're attempting to control you by making you believe that they are irreplaceable. But here's the truth. No one is irreplaceable. Relationships are about mutual respect and growth, not about holding on to someone out of fear of being alone. Marcus Aurelius reminds us that we should never be afraid of change or loss, because these are natural parts of life. In one of my past relationships, I heard this phrase often. It made me question my worth and fear being single. But over time, I realized that this was just a tactic to keep me trapped in a relationship that wasn't serving me. Once I walked away, I discovered that there were plenty of people who valued me for who I was, without needing to use fear as a means of control. If she ever says, "You'll never find someone like me," take it as a sign that she's trying to manipulate you into staying. Trust in your own worth and don't be afraid to leave. Habit 6. I don't trust you. The final phrase that should set off alarm bells is, I don't trust you. Trust is the cornerstone of any healthy relationship. Without it, even the strongest bond will crumble. When a woman tells you she doesn't trust you, especially without valid reasons, it's a sign of deeper issues. Stoicism teaches us to value honesty and integrity, and part of that is fostering trust in our relationships. However, trust is a two-way street. It must be earned, but it should also be given if the relationship is to thrive. When someone repeatedly tells you they don't trust you, it may not always be about your actions. Often, it reflects their own insecurities or past experiences. While it's natural for people to have trust issues based on past relationships, projecting those insecurities onto you is not fair. The Stoic principle of living according to reason applies here. If you've done nothing to break her trust, her constant distrust could be emotionally draining and damaging. I once dated a woman who constantly accused me of being untrustworthy. At first, I tried to reassure her, thinking that I needed to prove myself. But no matter how much I tried, it was never enough. Her accusations were not based on my behavior, but rather on her own unresolved issues. Over time, I realized that her lack of trust was poisoning our relationship, and I had to make the difficult decision to walk away. If she tells you she doesn't trust you, despite your honesty and integrity, take a step back and evaluate the relationship. Stoicism teaches us to maintain our inner peace and not allow the insecurities of others to disrupt it. A relationship without trust is a relationship without a solid foundation. You deserve to be with someone who believes in you and trusts you, just as you should trust them. If her distrust becomes a pattern, it's a strong indicator that it may be time to leave. Relationships require mutual respect, empathy, and honesty. If you hear any of these 6 phrases, it's time to reflect and possibly walk away. Stoicism teaches us to value our dignity and emotional well-being above all else. Remember, you have control over how you respond to the words and actions of others. If a relationship starts undermining your sense of self, it's time to let go. Stay true to your values and principles, and never settle for less than you deserve.